Introduction to IT contracting. That's what these sessions are all about. And this one is understanding the market. So I've been a contractor since 2001, been doing DevOps stuff, whatever that is, since 2015. And I'm developing confident contractors. Put some real work into starting writing a book today, getting all the headings and things. So I've got a pattern to work from. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the market. Oh, I do get very excited and talk very fast on these sessions. I'm sorry about that. Anyways, so the contractor market. The first obvious question is, who are the customers? Well, they fall into a number of categories. They could be startups. This is somebody who's got a crazy idea, that midnight dream, and they wake up and they go, I know there's something I can do that will change the world, but I probably need a bit of help. What about getting somebody to help me to develop an app? Or heck, let's go old school. Get a sheet of paper, write your prototype. That's the word I'm looking for. Write a prototype on a sheet of paper and then talk to people in the street. I know talking to people is quite scary, but here we are. Prototyping, going for that startup, developing an application. They need our help. They need our expertise. They need us to design stuff, write stuff, create stuff, serve stuff, put stuff on the internet. Startups. I'll talk about more in a while about why startups are important. But then there's SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprise. Now this could be anything from 5 people just starting out. Could have been a startup, but they're a bit more established. Let's say they've been going for 3 or 4 years. They've made a profit. Good start. But they also need our help from an ongoing basis. Maybe they're upgrading that prototype. Maybe they're expanding. They've got so many customers coming in and they need to scale up. They need to scale their application up. They need to scale their web presence. They need to scale their marketing. They need to scale lots of things and hopefully make a more profit and changing the world with their killer idea as they do so. And then there's big biz. The big businesses that kind of plod about, take years to do anything, but they get the really big stuff done. Or not, Referring to the HS2 project, that's a really big project. Really big biz sorting on that. But sometimes it can go wrong. And particularly in this stage of the cycle. Getting ahead of myself though. I'll talk about cycles in a moment. But there's big biz. So we're talking about like government departments or the banks, both of my customers, by the way, or maybe something a little bit smaller like an e-tailer or a high street retailer, or something a little bit more niche than that. Maybe they're listed on the stock exchange, so the PLC companies, Hargreaves Lansdown. I know I keep mentioning finance, but I've got quite a lot of experience and background in finance companies. I'm sure there's some other big companies as well you might be able to think of. Shell, energy, water companies, that kind of thing. Anyway, there's a big range of who could be the market. From startups, teeny tiny, right at the beginning, to the mid-range, making a profit, making a difference, to big biz, getting on and keeping the stable stuff going. But then there's the contractor market. What does that look like? Well, you could be doing sales to the general public. As a contractor, you can be listed on something like Fiverr or several other jobbing websites are available, I'm sure. And you're dealing with the general public, designing websites, helping them with those little projects. The startups kind of fall into this category because maybe they've not found their feet enough as a company yet, and it's still the founder just working on his own or her own. They're working on their side project that they hope will become a startup. We can help them too. But what do they want? Well, that also depends on their stage of where they are in their thingamabobs, in their cycle, if you like, individual cycles. Heck, I'm going to say cycles a lot during this presentation, I can tell. Anyways, so when you're working with people, they can want you for just a one-time project. Now, hi, yeah, we've got this application and we want to stick it on the internet and make sure that if 1 million people access it all at once, it doesn't crash. Can you help with that? Sure. One-time job, 2-3 weeks to set that up, fixed fee, off you go. I have a couple of friends that work on that basis, shorter term projects like that. Then we've got the shorter, or I've called short projects in this case, is where it's somewhere in between there. So you've got somebody, they want you to do a larger piece of work and it's going to take maybe 3 to 6 months perhaps. You don't want to pay a person a full-time job for doing that. That's ridiculous. You want a contractor to come in and do that. And maybe with their experience and expertise, they can get that done for you. Maybe you'll have 2 or 3 working together in order to make this a reality. And then there's the longer term projects, stuff that's going to take more than 6 months. We want to have a complete automated system for being able to upgrade our database system when the major version of the database changes, and we don't want any data loss. We want all the data backed up, and we want one of our DBAs to do it. We want it that simple. Sure, that's going to take a bit longer than 6 months. So, we can work out a contract on that basis. Or maybe they're moving along in their project and they've gone through the startup stage and now they just want somebody to keep an eye on things, maybe to cross-train their existing staff so they can look after it. That kind of thing. And then there's the death of the cycle, the death of the project, if you will. It's being decommissioned because it's being replaced by something new and shiny, but they want somebody, the staff that they've got, they don't want to work on the old, decrepit stuff, the legacy, as we like to call it. They want to work on the new stuff, and that's fair. So us as contractors can come in and we can, help decommission the old stuff, or keep it creaking along for months, is sometimes the case. So the next question, we know what they want. How much budget do they have? And that is a very complicated question. Well, it's not a complicated question. How much budget do they have? The answer, on the other hand, is a bit more complicated. And that's where we start talking about the big cycle, the economic cycle. We've got the 4 cycles that any economics major will be able to tell you. If they've done a degree in economics, they'll go, oh yeah, there's 4 of them. There's the recovery phase, the early upswing phase, the late upswing phase or the peak, and then there's the slowing down phase or the recession phase. And I joyfully pinch this off of ritholtz.com, and there's many cycles that all say the same thing. You get this little bit at the beginning, you get a growth, you get a peak, and you get a drop off. In fact, it's exactly the same as the product graph, if you've ever seen those. A startup will come in and they'll have, some early sales and stuff. Then they'll really kick and get the market behind them. They'll peak, they'll get the maximum sales they can, and then it will drop off again. This is why products are always coming out as new and improved, because of following this cycle. But it also follows with the economic cycle as well. So the obvious question I know you've got is, that's great, Neil. We can see we're in an economic cycle. Everyone knows that. Where are we in the current cycle? And that takes a little bit more guessing. Interest rates have a big part to play in where the cycle is at any time. Not necessarily the amount of interest rates, and I know the younger people in the audience will be looking at this. 1976, interest rate 5%. Oh, that's okay, but then 1978, 17% interest. Can you imagine having a mortgage at 17%? Outrageous, because you guys have all been used to this next to nothing interest rate. The thing is, all of the investors have also been used to this. So they've been going out borrowing money at this cheap rate because the banks have been giving it away. And then they'll put it into something that can earn them a higher rate of interest. like, I don't know, starting a business, having that startup idea. I mean, why wouldn't you start a business in 2010 when you can have a loan from the bank with next to no interest on it? Start your business, start the sales, the marketing, the idea, the research, and get those sales in. And then you're making loads of profit. You can pay that money back, hire some contractors to help you because you're growing so fast. And then you get to 2022 and oh my God, it's not that this interest rate is particularly high. You know, it's compared to these, it's quite low. But to here, it's enormous. You know, if we're talking 0.5% here and we're talking 5% here, that's a 10 times increase on the interest that you're paying on those loans. This is one of the reasons why everyone has suddenly gone, OEC, close down, sack a load of people. What's going to happen next? Don't know. Hold on to your hats. Let's see what happens next. This is also why we can see on the global venture markets. This is a global venture dollar volume, whatever that means. Essentially, Crunchbase follows the amount of money that companies can raise on the international markets, mainly US, to be honest with you. You know, the UK venture capital is only about 4% of the global numbers here. But anyway, the American money, let's put it that way. Okay, a bit more than American money. It reached a peak around 2021. Now, this might look slightly familiar to our cycle graph earlier. You know, we've got a little bit of growth here. We've got a little bit of a leveling off dip here in 2015, 2016. You know, stuff was happening. It was a little bit, is the interest rate's going to go anywhere? You know, if we go back to our interest rate graph in 2015, we can see that, yeah, look at that. It did a little bit of a jump up in 16, 17. But this is the UK interest rates. I don't have a graph for the US rates. I think they were slightly different. But I would imagine there was a slight rise in interest rates around this time, and that's what caused that little bit of hesitation. Then it goes up again, and you've got this same cycle again. You go the up, the peak, the down, the up, the peak, the down, the up, the flipping heck. What happened there? Loads of money coming from everywhere. That's that late recovery of the interest rates coming in. Now it's going to be cheap money everywhere. Let's actually throw all of our money in. Not only the venture capitalists doing it, but everyone and their dog are doing it. You know, Bitcoin, anybody. And then, of course, over expansion of everything. More people are getting paid lots of money. Not much people are spending the money because, hey, there's only so much money to go around, right? And then it suddenly drops off a cliff here. And this is the real reason why we saw all of those layoffs last year and the year before. You know, people like the Facebook and the Google and the other big organizations, they're just slashing all of their staff because all this money that they had coming in this year, suddenly they don't have that much money to spend. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know how you want to look at it, people are the most expensive thing. And now that shouldn't come to a surprise to you because people like to spend money. I've never once met a tomato or an apple that wanted money. No, changed my mind. So the investors, here they are, getting these lovely returns on that borrowed money, and then all of a sudden it's all closing off down. The monies are closing down, the businesses are slowing up, and the whole economy's slowing down again. So if I go back to our thing, yeah, it's pretty obvious that we've hit this peak, and now we're in this economy slows, dip, almost recession. You know, the markets are dropping. I read an article this morning that said that short rates are happening. This means, this is different definition of short on this is, but if you short a stock, it means you expect the price to go down. And there's a lot of venture capitalists that are expecting the big companies, those big businesses that I mentioned earlier, listed on the stock exchange, where they're expecting their stock price to fall. I mean, hey, don't need a crystal ball to see that happening. You know, we got that downward ski slope right there. And so they're betting on the market, saying their price is going to fall. And that also has a further impact on everything else. But essentially, interest rates went up. Everyone went, oh heck, all the free money's gone. What are we going to do? There's an interesting side effect to this, though. The side effect being is that all of a sudden the venture capitalists don't need to invest money into businesses anymore. They can just leave it in the bank and get 5%. Yeah. Try and find 5% in 2010, they'd have had to invest it into a business. Here, they can just sit on it in the bank, and that's okay. The bad enemy of that, though, is inflation, and that's gone a bit stupid, as we all know. Anyway, what was the question? Something to do with timing, right? That's right. So, what's my opinion? Cycles are getting shallower as they go through the thing. They're getting shallower and not quite as wild as they used to. I could show you examples from the dot-com boom. Anyone here remember that? Where businesses were getting 50 times valuation and not making any profit, and then all of a sudden the venture capitalists again, they stopped sharing their money with the dot-com companies. Dot-com companies then ran out of money. They're running on their burn rate, which is how much they get through their cash that they've got in their reserves, and then they go bust. And so since then it's got a little bit shallower, but people forget as generations get older. The same things happen again. So the cycles were getting shallower, but heck, we might have just had a big thump. And as I mentioned already, lots of perms lost their jobs last year and the year before that because the big business doesn't have that much money to spend on them anymore. However, this is an opportunity for contractors, because where you don't want a permanent to do a project, like I mentioned before, those smaller projects, they don't really want to take on a full-time employee for that sort of thing. They want a contractor to come in, do the contract, do the project, deliver it, and then they can wipe them off the books again. They don't have to cost the same as a full-time employee. So there's an opportunity for us to get those smaller projects. And companies are paying for empty offices. Some of the companies are paying lots of money to get rid of their offices. It was reported last week that Facebook paid 7 years of their rent up front to get rid of a 15-year contract on their London office. Now, they got more than one London office, so it's not as headline grabbing as it could be. But that's some serious money going out the door, paying an office space for 7 years that they're not going to be able to use. So companies are paying a lot for empty offices, which again gives us an opportunity. They've got some money there spare where they're not having to pay for the offices, so let's pay for consultants and contractors who've got their own offices or are working from home. Now, the working from home office, that's obviously a thing now, and many companies on the news last night, Swindon Council saying, oh yeah, you have to come into the office because we want you to spend your money at lunchtime on the high street. Someone should tell them that the high street's dead. It's been dead for a while. Out of town department stores, anybody? That was a few years ago. Anyway, I digress. So what do we need to do? If you're a contractor, stick at it. There are contracts around. They are available. There's an unfortunate event quite close to me where some contractors on a big project got laid off. Not everybody, just a small subsection. But there's other contracts that they could pick up, and they're still around on those projects. But most of all, be prepared. Being a contractor does have its opportunities, but it does have its downsides as well. These cycles happen. They happen quite regularly. I'd like to put a figure on it, maybe 7 to 10 years or something. This happens, I've been a contractor long enough since 2001 even, where I've seen this cycle happen a couple of times. In fact, if you were here last week on my origin story, I was made redundant, and that was nothing to do with cycles. And so that also happens too. Sometimes a project's just not working out or working in the way that they intended. So you've always got to be prepared. Have a budget. Have a fund that you can rely on, your emergency fund or rainy day fund. Also have your CV up to date, and invest time in a network. I've been contracting for a long time, and I've never been out of a contract for more than 2 months. And this is because I've got quite a strong network of recruiters that I know of, and some of them are just waiting for me to say I'm available. That's the position you want to be in. So how can you get there? Well, did I mention I was writing a book? I might have. It's about compliance, how to run a limited company. It's about contracts, where to find them, what they look like, and what should be in it, and what you need to do to prepare. And that's the key word here. It takes time to prepare this stuff. And once you've got the contract, the cash flow, making sure that everybody who needs to get paid gets paid, including yourself. But you do need to be prepared. I mean, I went for an interview once. It was, I think it's Wednesday or Thursday. And they said, "Great, we love you." I was in there for 5 minutes. It might not have even been that long. It probably felt longer because I was nervous. "Can you start on Monday?" "Yes, I can." And this is because I already had my compliance in place, my limited company. I knew what a contract looked like. My bank account was set up for my limited company. I knew what my letterhead looked like. I had invoices ready to go. So you do need to be ready. So when do you start? Can I show you the ways of 3 C's of contracting? And what are the questions you need answers for? Something that even contractors that I know now, there's some questions that they've never thought to ask. And their accountant isn't going to think to ask them for them. They just think, oh, they're not interested, or they already know. I will go through, all the questions you need to know the answers to, and of course, what those answers are. But are you ready? I've got a quiz where it'll test your knowledge and to see how ready you are to be a contractor and whether we can work together. I've put a link to that in the comments on this meet, and I'd love to see what your results are. You do the quiz, we'll send you a result back and take you on to the next steps.